All right. Without further ado, let's go ahead and start our newest edition of the No Ticket Required Summer Movie Review Series. Let's hit that bumper. This week, we are reviewing 2009's Invictus, which is a biopic film, stars Morgan Freeman and Matt Damon. This is based on the true my goodness. This is based on the true story of what happened after the election of Nelson Mandela as president of South Africa when apartheid ended. He's trying to unite the country, and he's trying to do it behind the South African Springboks rugby team. And there's also a 30 for 30 ESPN, which tells the entire story. This is long after Nelson Mandela passed, so they didn't get a chance to interview him. But they interviewed many of the rugby players, many of the players who are on that team. They interviewed the coach. They interviewed some other people who lived in South Africa at the time. I believe it was Bishop Desmond Tutu was one of those who was interviewed. Okay. There's another human rights activist who was also interviewed. But I had never seen this movie before. I don't think Dustin had ever seen this movie either. So you're gonna see this through our eyes, which are, I would say, qualify as fresh eyes in terms of seeing this movie for the first time. So while I look up some facts about the film, Dustin, why don't I get your impressions about this movie? What you thought? Were you surprised? Were you disappointed? Were you inspired? Let's get your thoughts on this film.
I will say now, full disclosure, I had seen this movie, but I probably saw it in the theaters when it first came out. If not, right when it came out, close to when it came out, because I could be misremembering, but I saw it. I know I watched it with my mom. And I think we watched it in the theater. So, because sometimes Mom and I, we would go to the movies and stuff, but sometimes it was tough to find one that we could agree on. But that was one, if memory serves, that we both kind of were interested in, I think for different reasons. Or maybe, I can't ask her, unfortunately, but maybe she was just, trying to do me a solid there. But so I would say I hadn't seen this movie in over a decade. So I'd say they're pretty fresh eyes here, decade plus. So I would say it did a good job. This movie tries to tackle a lot. It really tries to tackle a lot. It gets to the point, as a matter of fact, the first half of this movie, I wouldn't really classify as that much of a sports movie. Mm-hmm. The rugby team makes some appearances. The second half is when this becomes a sports movie. This kind of turns the corner and becomes a traditional sports movie. But this movie to me was about a lot more than sports. Obviously, yes, I'm not super educated on apartheid in South Africa, and I'm not, but I know Nelson Mandela, he abolished it, got rid of it. And this movie tackles that issue and shows kind of, to the best of its ability, and I'm sure there's some Hollywoodification in there. I'm sure there is. But to the best of his ability, what I liked about this movie is I think it definitely walked the line between a political movie and tackling a bigger issue and showing the divide that clearly was there in the country, and also walking the line of a traditional sports movie. I think it does a decent job of putting the two things together. This thing is going to rank pretty high on my list, although I watched this movie in two halves because of scheduling and some other things that were happening in life. And I was more enraptured with the first half, I will say. But when it went to the second half and became a traditional sports movie, I would say, I was still in, but I wasn't as interested. I was interested in, to me, Morgan Freeman. This movie is starring Morgan Freeman and Matt Damon, as you've been saying. But Morgan Freeman is the clear star of this movie. Morgan Freeman gets more screen time in this movie. And he has a little bit of an accent, but he does a better job than Will Smith. He doesn't try to like go too far.
Right.
That's right. We took another shot at King Richard, the can of corn. Even though I liked it,
Corn.
I liked it more than Ryan did. But I did, but still, I don't. It was not high on either of our lists that year. But so I thought this movie, it tries to tackle a lot. So I'll kind of land the plane here, but I thought it did a good job of showing the divide in South Africa in the opening sequence. And kind of did the montagey thing to try to set up, what had been going on. And then in the beginning of the movie, I thought some of the metaphors in this movie, or the shots rather, were a little heavy-handed. In the beginning, the two sides are separated by a literal fence. You got the all
Yeah.
rugby team playing rugby over there, and you got a bunch of African American, or not. You have literal Africans. Sorry, you have black people playing soccer, and they're separated by a fence here. And I'm like,
Yep.
okay, that's that's a little much.
It's heavy-handed, but it's true
Yeah.
to form because of
Yep.
because of apartheid, which is
Yep.
basically Jim Crow, the Jim Crow of Africa. That's basically what it was, Jim Crow
Yes.
laws, but it was Jim Crow laws on steroids.
Yeah, it was a really ramped up version. And I was about to say it's heavy handed, but it does work. And then I don't know about you, Ryan, and we'll get your thoughts, but I buy Morgan Freeman as Mandela immediately. Like he
Yep.
immediately is likable. Immediately the scene where he tries right in the beginning to unite the two police forces into his guard.
Mhm.
And you can see what he's trying to do. And I have right here heavy-handed approach to emphasize the division and fears and paranoia by both black and white South Africans in this movie, but it works. Mandela immediately tries to lead by example, unifying the security team. I really like that. And his reasoning, to me, one of the highlights of this movie is his speech explaining to a sports group that wants to abolish the name of the Springbok. And he talks about
Yep.
rooting against the Springboks and rooting against any team. He was a fan while he was in prison. He was a fan of any team that was playing the Springboks.
Mhm.
But his speech in the movie um, perfectly illustrates why he's so adamant about keeping the Springboks name. He said if we change everything that they love and everything that they hold dear, we are playing right into their fears. We're doing exactly what they're expecting us to do. And to me it was a highlight. And his aide there, I would say maybe like his right hand woman, she keeps telling him like, why are you so invested in this rugby? And he says there's certain scenes throughout the movie where he says, you still think I'm wasting time? Because you can see that the rugby is uniting people, and that's
Mhm.
what Mandela is trying to do. He's trying to unite people through sports, and I think this movie illustrates the point correctly that sometimes sports can be a lot more than sports. They can serve a larger purpose. And I really enjoyed the sequence of the rugby team working with the kids. At the beginning, of course, you got one guy that's like, "Oh, I'm glad I don't live here," and then by the end, that guy's helping a kid, and
That
and
kid's
and he,
lifting kids in the air. They're all tackling him.
yeah, and he enjoys it. And
Yeah.
that's where Matt Damon really enters this movie. For the first 44 minutes, you really don't see Matt Damon. You have one opening scene where his father is like disgustedly watching Nelson Mandela drive to the president's residence with disgust, and he says some horrible thing, and Matt Damon is silent. And then that's the last time you see Matt Damon until about 45 minutes to an hour into this movie. And then it becomes clear that Mandela, he asks Matt Damon to bring this team together. He asked Matt Damon, he said, "Hey, I want this team to serve a bigger purpose. And Francois really gets into it. The way the movie portrays it, Francois buys in, and Francois is the reason that the team starts training so hard and really buys in and kind of realizes it's more about rugby. They're trying to help the country. And then the second half of this movie really hits all the sports movie boxes, but I didn't find it annoying. Sometimes, Ryan, we watch movies, we find them a little tropey, but this one had everything. It's got the team coming together, similarly to another movie that is on our list for later in No Tickets Required rotation. Remember the Titans. You will see that the Invictus follows the template. The team, they have many teams where they have many scenes where you can see the team is bonding. They're coming together. They're starting to really click on all cylinders. And then you have the unstoppable opponent. They really do a great job of setting up the All Blacks and how indestructible they were. And I'm not a big rugby fan, but even I know about the fame of the All Blacks and everything, and the haka and all the things that they did, and what a dominant opponent this were. So that's where they really honed in on it and kind of brought it into the plane of a traditional sports movie. But I like this movie, and I'll finish out with one quote that I've been big on quotes from movies this year. Maybe it's because of what's going on in my life. But it said, "If I cannot change when circumstances demand it, how can I expect others to?" And that was a quote by Morgan Freeman playing Nelson Mandela. And I think that movie, that quote sums up this movie for me. And with that, I turn it over to you, Ryan.
Okay, so I forgot that Clint Eastwood was the director of this film.
Yeah,
he was director. Mm-hmm. So there were some parts in this movie where I'm going, okay, because I had watched The 16th Man, which was the 30 for 30.
Okay, I have not.
About the South Africa rugby team, because it was 15 years. Actually, this year will be 30 years after that win in South Africa in the Rugby World Cup in 1995. I'm old. I remember watching some of it. I remember watching some of it when I was 18. Because I remember that happened around the summer that I graduated from high school, and I remember watching the replay. I think it was at that time Sports Channel New York.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so I remember watching some of it, and that's when I started to get into rugby. Was around that time, but it wasn't until a few years later when I started watching like the Super Pacific Rugby, or what it was called. Yeah, it was Super Rugby then, where it had professional teams from New Zealand, Australia, and at the time, South Africa, playing against each other in the professional leagues. The South Africa broke off a couple of years ago. They're now playing in the United Rugby, which is teams from Ireland, South Africa, Spain, and Italy.
Oh,
and Scotland and Wales, because it was formerly just Irish, Scottish, and Welsh teams, professional teams, and a team from Italy. But now they're all together. I forgot who won the title this year. Was either Leinster or if it was the Bulls. I'll take a look. But that's when I started. Again, 95, late 90s, when I started getting to rugby, the All Blacks. Yes, you mentioned the All Blacks team. Fun fact about Jonah Lomu, unfortunately, he's no longer in this realm. He died of kidney failure in, I think, 2011.
Oh,
but
man.
At that time, like, he was magic. That was the guy who got me into rugby, was Jonah Lomu.
Okay.
Because he's a big dude, but he could fly. That's why they put him in the back as a back instead of as a forward, because if I'm looking at the stats, Jonah Lomu, and I'm sorry, he died in 2015. I'm sorry, it was 2015. He was 6'5" and like 250 pounds, and he flew.
Oh man!
Like think Aaron Judge playing baseball, but playing rugby.
Yeah, that's
although
crazy.
Judge is a little taller. I think he's
6'7". I think so. Yeah,
he's a big dude. But Jonah Lomu, man, and I remember at the time when Jonah Lomu was put on the grand stage because that was his first. I believe that was his first World Cup. Jerry Jones, Gerald, tried to sign him onto the Dallas Cowboys. He
Oh
wanted
my
to make
goodness,
him a
he would.
Dallas Cowboy.
He would. Oh my goodness.
Hey, Jerry, actually, I do want to speak to. I do have Jerry Jones online. Jerry, tell us your thoughts about Jonah Lomu.
You know, when I saw Jonah play in 1995, you know, I went. It's one of the reasons that Jimmy Johnson and I had to part ways, because I wanted to sign him and Jimmy was just not having it. And I said, you know what? Jonah comes to Dallas or you go, my friend. So that's why. But it fell apart in negotiations, you know. I just couldn't make it happen. But it's one of the greatest what ifs. I think he could have been a great Dallas Cowboy.
Would he have made a great Arkansas Razorback?
Oh, yes. He exemplifies everything about Arkansas Razorback football.
This is why you want to subscribe to our channel, folks. Stuff like that. But yes, Jonah Lomu did. Jerry Jones did reach out. The Dallas Cowboys reached out to try to sign him. 6'5", 280. It says 283 pounds was his weight, but he ran the 40 in just under 4.5.
That's crazy to me. You know what it reminds me of when you're talking about that description is like Bam Bam Bigelow. Bam Bigelow was a big dude who could moonsault. You know, it's like, you know,
the pride of the beaches of New Jersey.
Yeah.
But looking at some of this, look at this movie and thinking back to that time period, because I remember, you know, as a teenager thinking about that time period. You know, and when Mandela was elected as president of South Africa, I was probably 13 at the time. And then when they hosted the World Cup, I was out of high school. I was 18. So you think during the movie, and you know, there's some overlap of history, I would say some liberties with some of the history there. Kind of make it like, you know, remember the Titans, Miracle. Very Disney-fied in some ways. Some things happened, some things didn't happen. We'll find out, and we'll find out when we review Remember the Titans. But I have to wonder about some things in the movie. And maybe this is the question you would ask Francois Pienaar. Did he actually meet face to face and have afternoon tea with Nelson Mandela?
Mm-hmm.
Did he actually stay up the night before the World Cup final, thinking about Mandela being put in prison for all that time on Robben Island? Like the fact that they were taking that they went to Robben Island during the World Cup, that actually happened. That's documented in the documentary, the 16th Man. So I know for a fact that happened. The rainstorm that happened, they actually almost called off that game, that semifinal against France, because of the weather.
Okay.
And France would have advanced to the final because it's based on all the penalties they took in their game against, I think it was Romania. That where you saw the one scene where you saw all the fighting and the guys pulling each other out of the scrum or the ruck. So, but you know, I mean, at times this movie was a little bit slow, a little bit plotting. But you know, you talk about this so well on the show, Dustin. You talk about the nostalgia factor of some of these movies, and Invictus does have a lot of nostalgia in this movie, especially about that time period where Nelson Mandela is doing his damnedest to bring the country together. It's not longer about whites, it's being white. It's no longer about being black. It's about being unified as a country, which I think is something is missing in our day here in 2025 in the United States. We're so divided over what things going on in the news and politics and the election, and it can get muddled, but all that stuff just muddles the water in the fact that we're Americans, and we've got next year's our 250th birthday. I mean, how crazy is that? Next year is the 250th anniversary of the United States of America.
It's going to be a big year.
It's going to be a big year for sure. But it's also interesting that Matt Damon was selected to play Francois Pienaar. Matt Damon's 5'10". Francois Pienaar is 6'3". But they try to make it look like you want to suspend that. Again, you got to suspend your disbelief when it comes to movies, even those that are based on a true story, like this one. This one's a biopic. So, but a lot, like you were right, Dustin. A lot of this movie seems to emphasize it's almost kind of like a love letter to Nelson Mandela and what he did for the country. And then I looked up what was happening in South Africa after Mandela served, because he only served one term as president of South Africa. And he said it's very George Washington like that he was only in office for such a short time. He said, I only want to serve one term. And this was the only purpose of him being elected was the fact that he wanted to bring the country together. You wanted to unite the country. And you can see during the final that you see people's houses. You see people, both black and white, sitting in the same room together watching this rugby final. You see the little boy.
Yes, the cab sequence. Yeah.
With the police listening to the final on the radio. And I don't know if it was in Cape Town or Pretoria or Johannesburg, wherever they were. But as soon as that game ended, the final whistle blew. You see everybody just jumping around, dancing. You see the people outside the liquor store watching the final. And there wasn't a whole lot of action in this movie in terms of the rugby action. Yeah, I can't totally judge how it was filmed, but you see a lot of field level shots as opposed to other football movies where it's just like a one sequence of you're focusing yourself on a certain position, like the quarterback or the running back or a linebacker or defensive lineman blitzing. Like it's the one shot on the field, and which they actually filmed all the rugby sequences in. I believe they filmed it in Ellis Park. I'm looking at IMDb here. The rugby scenes, I think they film it either in Cape Town or at Ellis Park. I'm trying to remember, but I'll look. I'll find out. Oh yeah, here it is. All the rugby games were filmed at Johannesburg's Ellis Park Stadium.
Okay, so it was on location there where the game was played.
Yep.
And that's actually, I'm glad that you're bringing up the rugby shots, because Ryan, I am not as educated on the sport of rugby as you are, and you played it.
Play it.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, I have it in my notes. It says rugby scenes field ? Parentheses, ask Ryan. So how authentic did the rugby scenes feel to you?
It wasn't as intense as playing an actual rugby game, or if you watch a rugby match on television. And you can kind of tell how far rugby has come in terms of the athletic ability and because you look at the shirts they wear and the pants and the shorts they wear. Like that's all heavy material back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Like now you see the material that they wear on the field. It's a little bit tighter, a little bit more athletically formed, because rugby players are a lot more athletic. I wouldn't say a lot more athletic, but they have better training. They have better workout. They know how to take better care of their bodies.
Yeah.
As the game has progressed, you look at a game 30 years ago. Look at some of the footage of the Rugby World Cup in that 30 for 30. And watch some highlights now of a rugby match, of a professional rugby match, whether it be a test match or competition like Six Nations or the Rugby Championship, or even the Super Rugby, which the season actually just ended a couple weeks ago with the Crusaders winning over the Chiefs. It's a lot more. It's a lot faster. It's a lot. I wouldn't say aggressive, but it's the physicality is there.
Okay.
And it's a lot different 30 years ago. If you watch some of the rugby from 30 years ago, like in the World Cup and on that 30 for 30. So, but yeah, I mean, they got it right. It's not as, but the filming, like some of the sequences weren't as detailed and in depth. Like you see the scrum, the action in the scrum and the slow motion shots that Clint Eastwood put together, the editing put together.
Yeah.
That's almost true to form.
Okay.
because I've been involved in a scrum, and it's not fun. It's a lot of pushing. It's a lot because it's basically you're basically 8 guys on each side,
Yeah.
just colliding, coming together, and trying to move each other.
Yeah.
And it's a tough task. Although I preferred being in the scrum more than on lineouts because I couldn't. I had bad shoulders, so I had trouble lifting the lifting the locks up in the air as a loose head prop. Unless if the guy was a little heavier, if the guy was a little bit lighter, it's fine. Like I can get him up in the air, but if it was a little heavier, I had a really tough time getting up in the air. But no. I wish there could have been a little bit more rugby action. Some kind of true to what the game was back in the 1990s. But they were okay. They did fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say you want more rugby action. I think I tend to agree with you because I think the rugby shots that were in there, like the second half of the movie where they shifted pretty much like the final, I'm going to estimate here, but I'm going to say about the final half hour, if not more, was all about the game against the All Blacks and everything. And I like that because it was for building the drama. But that's where the movie kind of grinded down for me, is because it was a lot of emphasis on the game. I think if there had been more action sequences rather than the slow motion scrum shots and all that kind of stuff, I think that's where it kind of slowed down for me. So I think we might be kind of in agreement there.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, this was more, like you said, Dustin, it wasn't so much about the rugby itself. It was more about what Nelson Mandela did for South Africa. And I was looking at IMDb, and he did say, he was on record of saying the only person who could play me in a movie is Morgan Freeman.
Oh, nice.
And
they did that.
Here we are. So before we go to commercial break, what's your ranking for this series of No Creds of No Ticket Required here?
All right. So the moment we've all been waiting for, Seabiscuit is still number 1 for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have to remind myself of the movies mentally that we have watched.
I got the list. Hang on.
All right. So I think because
this is what we've watched so far. We've watched Draft Day, Seabiscuit, Mystery Alaska, Blue Chips, No Holds Barred, and then finally this week Invictus.
Okay, so if I remember correctly, I previously had Blue Chips ranked number 2 because of nostalgia for me. Blue Chips has just been dethroned. Invictus makes number 2 because I was in for most of this movie. Like it's not perfect by any means. Few movies are. Nothing in life is. But I bought into this. I liked how they kind of attacked it from multiple angles, and I like how they really emphasized the climate in South Africa and what Nelson Mandela was trying to do. And like I said, I really bought in to Morgan Freeman immediately. He was instantly likable. I rooted for Mandela, and I like the way that they attacked it. So Invictus is number 2. Blue Chips is number 3. Narrowly edged out Mystery Alaska. I like that a lot. That comes in at number 4. That's going to sound like a bad ranking, but it is not. Draft Day hits number 5, and then number 6, and it will be number 10 by the time we finish is No Holds Barred. Sorry, Rip 'em or whatever. Rip. Ryan, your ranking, sir.
All right, so top of the leaderboard is still Seabiscuit for me.
Yeah.
Number 2 is still Mystery Alaska.
Okay. All right.
Number 3, but not by much, is Invictus.
All right.
Now, I do want to ask, during that scene where the South African rugby team are coming back into the locker room, to the dressing room.
Oh, yeah.
And they start drinking, they start getting their beer. Yeah. I have to wonder what kind of beer they were drinking. Because let's all drink to the bitter taste of defeat. They all take a sip, and Matt Damon's like, You're right. This does taste like shit.
Yeah, and they all throw
what kind of beer they're drinking?
I know
out what they were.
Well, Ryan, we've been doing this podcast together too long because I thought the same thing, and I'm like, we got to get cans of it. We got to zoom in. We got to get cans of the beer. We got to try it. And I wonder though, because on the back of their rugby uniforms, Lion Lager,
or
yes. Lion Lager. Jesus, I put some extra flair on it. I don't know why. I don't know why I went French there, or but Lion,
Lion Lager. Yes, they were
Lion Lager,
primary sponsor. Yes,
yeah. So I wonder if it was Lion Lager. I don't know.
No, because they I don't think it would. It looked like Bundaberg was their beer, but I'll double check.
Yeah,
I'll have to watch it again and look very closely to see what beer brand they were.
Yeah,
or if it was just a generic.
It might have been.
We will have to find Lion Lager somewhere and
for
a taste
sure.
test.
Yeah.
So anyway, my ranking: Seabiscuit, Mystery Alaska, Invictus by a very slim margin, followed by Blue Chips, Draft Day, and then last place, No Holds Barred. That was my
Bill Walton's back. Bill Walton's back. We got a cavalcade of guests. We seem to routinely be able to get Jerry Jones.
Yep.
Bill Walton makes appearances on the show, as does Tony Atlas.
That's right. Tony Atlas here. We're watching Invictus.
That you gotta clip that one out. You gotta clip that one out. That one was so good.
Our apologies to Tony Atlas.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
And that has been this edition of No Ticket Required.